Hey y'all, hopefully you had a good day. So listen, I want to talk about something. Let's talk about parenting. So there is a young lady that I follow on this app on YouTube. Her name is Capriciana. She is a very mature young woman, and the reason why I am mentioning her, she recently made a video detailing some of her childhood trauma, and she was also on live last night talking about some of her childhood trauma that she experienced as a result of her mother and father. She focused more so on her father, but and I don't want to tell her story, but the reason why I want to mention it or talk about it is because what I have come to realize is that there are a lot of generational gaps that we experience as mothers or as parents and kids in child rearing. You know, I would never take away from her story. Her truth is her truth. Her experiences are her experiences. But she touched on some points that that made me really think about it. And I'm not going to tell her story. Her name is Capriciana, and you can find her on this app and go listen to her story. It was very profound. She is a very sweet young lady, and I admire her for being so young. She's 24, I believe, and she is a mother of one. And she's talking about, she's really trying to dive in and resolve some of her childhood trauma to make herself a better person and whole, per se, and to allow herself to be able to show up and be a better mom and parent to her son. With that being said, she made mention that she doesn't hold any animosity per se towards either of her parents. I feel like she did it in a way that was respectful. She made mention that she is grateful for having her parents and that she understands some people don't have parents at all, which but it does not take away from her truth and her experiences. But with that being said, she had made mention that she doesn't understand why, and I'm paraphrasing, none of this is direct quotes, but basically she doesn't understand why her mom did not seek help to make herself whole, and her mom's reliance on men. And I'm not making excuses for her mom at all, but I can only speak. I assume that her mom is in my age range, and I could be wrong about that as well. I'm 52, but I know during the time in which I was growing up, our parents did not, I never heard either one of my parents make mention about therapy or anything like that. In fact, I recall therapy being like a very taboo subject. When I grew up, I know that at least one of my parents could have greatly used therapy, and it's no disrespect to my parents, because I'm not going to even pretend that I know even my own parents, childhood trauma or whatever. And of course, that's not my story to tell. But anyway, just sitting back listening to some of the things that she was saying, and I think that's where some of the misunderstandings, and I would like to refer to them as generational misunderstandings. Yes, it would have been nice if one or both of her parents could have sought therapy to make themselves better, but realistically, when I look back during the time period in which I grew up, you didn't hear anything about therapy. It was very taboo that someone's going through therapy. That meant, at least where I'm from, that signifies you're weak or you're quote unquote thrown off or something like that. And so that's one of those things I don't think that the younger adults today or the young adults today realize, that therapy is a thing of now. And when I tell you we could have all used therapy, they don't even, behaviors weren't even looked at the same as far as in classrooms and stuff. If a person couldn't stay in their seat in classroom, they were just classified as bad and, you know, a misfit, that type of stuff. So I'm more inclined to say, and I could be wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, and not trying to offend anybody, I think therapy and behaviors were things of more privileged people, I would say. And that could be wrong. That's probably just my perspective from where I grew up at. And she also, sorry, my ring is going off, you guys. She also made mention, what else did she make mention? That her and her siblings had been trying to get get together with her mom to discuss some of the issues, but mom probably backed out. And again, I'm not making excuses at all, but if you think of the dynamics of one mom sitting before 4 children who feel that she has made some missteps, that is overwhelming. I can see how that would be overwhelming. And again, I don't know either party personally. I'm not making excuses. But what I would say is, like, when you have trauma to this magnitude and you want to, you know, dive into stuff and resolve some of these issues, I think it should be done in the presence of a professional. Because just imagine sitting in the middle of the room and you have all of these fingers pointing at you. Well, this is my experience because of what you did. This is what I feel you did wrong. And it's not to say they were going to approach it in this way, but I can see how it can be overwhelming for mom. And so, you know, as she was speaking, I was thinking about things like that. Sometimes I think I am a true empath, because it was like, as she was speaking, even though I know none of them personally, it was like I can feel her pain. Mom was not present to speak for herself, but it's like this sense of emotion that I was feeling, like, even for mom. Because I look at Capriciana, she is a beautiful young woman who is really wise beyond her years and really trying to grow into a healthy and whole individual woman, mother. I admire her because she's doing work at 24 that I probably hadn't really done even at 35. So I think what she is doing is commendable. But me being a person looking on the outside, having experienced my own set of childhood traumas and being a mother of adult children, it's like I can feel all sides of it. And one of the other issues that she touched on is that at some point her mother experienced some challenges and sent her and the siblings to live with their fathers, which is their other parent. And she talks about that experience and how hurtful it was that her mom did not come back. She had told her that she would come back, told them that she would come back, and she didn't come back. And I can definitely see how that would be hurtful. But then once again, I go to that other side and can't help but to think, was mom just so overwhelmed and not knowing what to do, how to do it? Was she just so tapped out in resources she couldn't see her way out? I don't know. Again, because like I say, mom wasn't there to speak on it. again, what I would say is, these are some things that not just Capriciana, it's plenty of families out there that we need to start tackling, because our perception of things sometimes is not actually reality. And that's just the truth of the matter. And we all have our perspective of what things should have been done, could have been done. And, at least I'm hearing more and more stories like this. I have my own stories, but these are some things that we really need to start sitting down as families, talking about. We need to normalize therapy and counseling, because like I say, even look at behaviors of kids in the classroom. I know, where I grew up at, corporal punishment was used. And think about it, some people were probably getting paddled and spanked for things beyond their control. Like one thing I can definitely speak on is one of my kids was in a behavior program. He was like, it wasn't a matter if the teacher was going to call, it was what time he was going to call. And I won't go all into details with, that particular child's story. But it turns out that my child was an epileptic. But when you think of epilepsy and seizures, you think of grand mal seizures, someone on the floor, body tensed up, constricted, and all that kind of stuff. Well, at the time, he didn't have grand mal seizures. At the time, they were petit mal or absent seizures. They happen so quick. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when people are coming out of seizures, they lose sense of things in that quick moment, even though it happens within the blink of the eye, or it might look to the average person that they're just staring at you. But when they're coming out of it, they don't know what just happened to them. They can't explain it, so they might appear as agitated. You might hear teachers say, well, this person, they came in class, they were doing well, but before the class was over, they were just a nuisance. And I know when my children were growing up, even this particular child's teacher was like, you need to take this child to the doctor. I think they have ADHD. And many, many years later, it turns out that my child never had ADHD, didn't have any behavior issues, but was experiencing seizures. But because there was not enough information, at least I didn't have the information, his doctors never went down that path to even evaluate for seizures. It was like, no, he just needs to learn how to sit in his seat and behave and stuff. And it was not until much later on in his life and he started experiencing grand mal seizures that we start like really looking into it. And it's like, that is what was happening the entire time, that it was being passed off as a behavior issue. It was beyond his control. So I'm saying all that to say there's a lot of conversation to be had within families. We might think our parents are just these horrible parents, they just didn't want to do right, but they come with their own set of challenges. And I think in order for these issues to be fixed, we can't sit down and point fingers at one person. And by no means am I saying Capriciana was doing that, because she was not. Like I said, previously stated, she handled it in a very mature manner, not blaming per se. She just shared her experience. She was not trying to make either of her parents look like they were horrible parents. And at one point she even said that she said she was grateful for her parents. But yeah, so I just want to know what you guys thought and take is on these type of dynamics within families. something that you're experiencing within your own family. You know, I think to a certain extent all families go through something, but when it comes to the dynamics of family trauma, I really think they should be handled in the presence of or with professionals, because if not, people feel attacked, and I don't think that's the overall goal. The overall goal, I think, is to reconnect the families so we can have stronger family bonds and ties, and create a space that's safe for all. Because in order to come to a resolution, everybody needs to be heard, everybody needs to be understood, and sometimes it's not always what we think. Sometimes, you know, our parents, our aunts, uncles, grandparents, or whatever, they're carrying trauma, and so the trauma just keeps repeating itself. I'm not gonna be so arrogant to say, oh, I perfectly parented. I know there are areas where I could have even parented better myself, and I've had to check myself over the years, like, okay, you need to take a chill pill, you know. And if you look at even within my children, from the first to the fourth child, their experiences were different because I was at a different maturity level, different point in my life. So anyway, with all that being said, let's start having discussions. Let's start creating a space that's safe for all. Let's start really trying to understand each other as parents, as kids, and as friends, or just whatever. But anyway, yeah, I found Capriciana's video and her live to be very profound. I think she handled herself very well, and you know, as she spoke, I thought about my own childhood. I thought about my own children, and I think we need to start having conversations and tackling some of the issues that are being faced in families, especially, and it's no slight to anybody else, but especially in our Black families. So give me your thoughts and tell me what you think.